Another episode of TBI Covered, the platform that allows both traumatic brain survivors, mental brain injuries, brain conditions, stroke survivors, gunshot survivors, AVM survivors, radio brain conditions, survivors alike, the disability community, caregivers, medical professionals, organizations, anyone such as brain injuries, to share their stories and provide tips plus resources and bring awareness to those impacted. I am Eric Renee, and my guest today are looking to change the world with their story. And so they're both inspirational parents. Kelly Lang is a brain survivor and brain injury council member, BIA speaker, and subject matter expert. And Michael Lang is a vice president in education members program. Here, let me welcome World Changers, Mr. and Mrs. Michael Kelly.
Hi, thanks for having
Hello.
us.
Thanks very
Hi,
much.
thank you for joining me on the show. I'm so honored to have you both. It's such an honor to have you both on here to share experience. So we're going to dive right into your story. So I want you to introduce yourselves and go with us into your story. Take us on the journey of what your experience that you had lived through.
You can start if you want.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Again, I'm Michael Lang, and I am a Vice President of Education and Member Programs. And I'm very excited to be here today. And we're anxious to talk a little bit about our story. And Kelly and I have been married almost 30 years, so we have a lot of history we can bring.
I love it. And Miss
Um,
Kim.
yeah, I'm Kelly Lang, and I know after everything that happened, found a new career. Not a career that you go to school and get certified in, but it's the career of a brain injury advocate,
Mhm.
speaker, and it's been a journey, but it opened up a whole different world for me than I ever expected.
I agree. It does open a whole new world because brain injury, it's so extensive. It's ever changing. And so I love that it's ever changing and it just never dull moment. I say never dull moment, never dull moments. And
Well, and
so
it
can you
never ends.
never. So can you tell yourself? I'm sorry. Can you tell your story about the incident that occurred? When did it happen? By the way, I don't think I ever knew that.
It's almost 21 years ago. It was November 27th,
Okay.
2001. I was driving to my daughter's to a Nutcracker stage rehearsal, and
Okay.
last thing I remember is pulling out of our driveway.
Hmm.
And then next thing, about 5 miles away from our home, we were hit from behind,
Hmm.
and driver had hit two other cars prior to us and pushed us through an intersection, and we were landed at a guardrail, we were suspended, and I remember my one daughter yelling, "Mommy, mommy, wake up!" And so I was very groggy. And then I heard someone talking to me and asking if there was anyone else in the third row of my minivan, and I said no. But I knew something was wrong with Olivia, and I just remember yelling, "You have to save her! You have to save her!" And my next memory is waking up in the emergency room.
Wow.
Yeah.
Goodness, it's my first. As I mentioned to y'all, this is my first time hearing a husband wife duo on TV Uncovered, and I just really I can imagine what it was like to get that phone call, Michael, to hear that your wife and children has been in an accident, and on your end, Kelly, like to even be to not even fully understand where you are and just what happens to just the I can't imagine how that feels. And even my own injury, it's kind of came in post what they call post traumatic amnesia, I think it is, traumatic amnesia, something like that. And not being aware of what happened is that's scary within itself. And so, beginning with Miss Kelly, after Michael lost his job, shortly after, the accident occurred, what was your mindset when you were understanding a little bit about more of what happened, or you came to, what was your mindset at that point?
I was in shock, and in my unconscious state, I had given them, the number of my friend who
Mhm.
was on their way to the hospital because they knew that Lydia couldn't be had to be transferred immediately. Um, I really was just thinking about her. But I remember when I drove, was her sister-in-law came to take me to go to the other hospital. So obviously I didn't have a car. Um, and I kept thinking, saying over and over, I don't understand how this could be happening. I don't understand. 'Cause like you mentioned, Mike had just been lost his job. He was laid off. And I just thought, wow, we just one thing after the other, and this can't be real. But then it became very real.
Hmm. And Miss Michael, what were your thoughts when you're notified that your wife and children were in an accident?
Well, 2001 was a difficult year for us in many different ways. It started off great. However, our mindset was in a difficult place, I guess. There was Kelly had suffered a miscarriage in the summer, and then the tragedy of 9/11 had come, and everyone was dealing with that.
Hmm.
And the house that we were moving to, it was delayed the moving date several times, and finally it closed on November the 3rd, and things we thought were heading in the right direction. But November the 8th, I and a few other folks were let go from the organization. So 5 days after we closed on a house, I was unemployed, but had
Hmm.
big mortgages now. So
Yeah.
3 weeks later, the car crash happened. So what happened during that time is I had a freelance consulting job in New Hampshire, and the job ended early, and I was really pleased. So I didn't even have time on November 27th to call Kelly to say I was coming home early.
Hmm.
So I jumped in the car from the airplane, the car, drove up to the house, and the house was really dark. And
Hmm.
then I remembered that, yes, Kelly and the girls were at the Nutcracker rehearsal. And back in those days, we had an answer machine, and we had a red light that was blinking. So the message came from our good friend Kristen,
Hmm.
and it went something like this: Mike, this is Kristen. Kelly and the girls were involved in a car accident. And then she paused, and I was just waiting for that everything and everyone was okay. And that didn't happen. And I think I felt my knees kind of buckled as she said, I need to get to the hospital as soon as possible. So I got there and did not know what to expect. I really did not know what had happened or who got hurt. So, and when I first walked in and I saw Kelly, I could tell that she was in a stage of shock. So,
Hmm.
um, I guess the best thing to say is that we were just both overwhelmed in a different way. Kelly was overwhelmed, I think, in the shock of the
Yeah.
situation. I was overwhelmed by the enormity of what was happening.
Hmm. Wow. It's just I can imagine. Again, I can imagine just that moment, the moments of even being there. It's enough for me on the outside looking in. I hear my family members and friends talk about my accident. It just seems like I can't imagine how they experienced it. I just can't imagine how that. Like I can imagine like your heart just drops like like it just like oh my god, are you okay? Like are you okay? And so I'm still puzzled as to how the hospital needed observation on you, Kelly, that they didn't immediately find a brain injury. I don't know how that's possible. Can you tell the viewers how that's possible, how that even occurs? Like, I'm sure you get a CT scan, I'm sure, or something like that. Like,
Yeah, I couldn't leave the first hospital with Olivia because they needed to do some testing. And I had a CT scan. I had some other tests because I kept telling them
mm,
that, my nose hurt. Um, I had two black eyes and a bloody nose. But they just said, you're fine. You're going to be sore, most likely. Take some ibuprofen. And then, I was discharged. And then even if while Libby was in a coma, my neck and my head were just killing me. And I thought it was from sleeping on a cot.
mm,
And so I went down to the emergency room again. They did more scans and they said, nope, everything's fine. You might need physical therapy eventually, but Yeah, everything's fine. So it wasn't until, you know, we'd been home for a month. So it was about 2 months after the accident is when I realized something was definitely off. So no one in either the hospital or the rehab center never said, you know, I think there might be something going on. And it wasn't until my general practitioner, after asking me a bunch of questions, and she said, you need to go see a neuropsychologist. And that's when I found out. And I was in shock the second time
Hmm. This
because I
I,
wasn't expecting it.
it's great. It's this like it doesn't make any sense to me, but I
Yeah.
guess. So when you saw your daughter in the intensive care unit, like I said, I'm not a mother, so I can't imagine that feeling. What was it like for you to? I'm gonna ask you both this question. I want you both to respond. Kelly, I start with you. How was it? How did you? What was your experience seeing your baby girl in the ICU? She was just 3 years old. What your experience when you saw her?
So I first saw her when they were going to take her to the other hospital, and they had her in a back hallway because they were waiting for
Mhm.
a cardiac ambulance. And the nurse said, "Do you want to see her?" And I said, "Yes." So they took me, they rolled me on the gurney to see her. And it wasn't until then that I realized I was on a backboard and had a C-spine collar. Um, and they kind of lifted mine and lifted hers, and she just looked so peaceful. You know, she looked
Mhm.
like a little angel. Of course, she had breathing tubes, but
Mhm.
I guess I didn't even, you know, that didn't register. And I just said, you know, that I loved her goodbye, and I, you know, asked them all to take care of her. And I later learned from the EMTs that there wasn't a dry eye in that hallway. They were
Mhm.
all crying because they didn't think she was going to make it. They really didn't think she was going to make that ambulance ride. So um, then when I saw her in the intensive care, that was a little bit more shocking. I think because the bright lights and then all the doctors and the nurses and you know, I didn't know what a traumatic brain injury was. I didn't know what any of that meant. And then
Mhm.
in hearing the machine breathing for her, um, it was hard. I mean, it was hard to know what to do, and it was you know, it was just like we just have to sit around and wait.
Mhm. And Mr. Michael, what about you?
So when I first saw her, similar to Kelly, she seemed somewhat peaceful, and I noticed that her breathing was regular and calm. And then I realized that it wasn't really her who was doing the breathing; it was the
Mhm.
respirator, ventilator, and seeing her face, which was turned to the side initially, so I didn't see it at first, but all the tubes that were connected to her, and she was just wearing a diaper at that point, and she's only three, and I kind of gasped once I realized the severity of things. Um, I think each time I was saying to myself, like Kelly, I said, this can't be real. I mean, this is really happening to us. So there's a lot to take in.
Mhm. Wow. And so, fast forwarding to a month later, your daughter's home. Things are going. Your shoes are covering. You're taking on role as mom. You're a mom, but you're also a caregiver as well. And so, mothers, in my opinion, are natural caregivers and nurturers, and so much more. But for someone watching, can you differentiate between mother and caregiver, or is it like one and the same, in your opinion?
It's one and the same. I mean, I think I'm a mother first and the caregiver second.
Mhm.
That's my those instincts will kick in, but I did end up being, you know, because Mike wasn't home as much once he started working again. Um, I did become the primary caregiver for her. You know, monitor, you know, managing all her appointments, managing, you know, all the therapies, and you know, keeping up with the school, which you know can individualize education plans of which services she was getting and making sure they were all she was getting them all.
Mhm.
Um, it became, you know, pretty much like a full time job.
Sure. So did you have any outside help? Anybody else in the family that may have helped you or
Mike's parents came. pretty much the next day, and they helped take care of Hannah, our older daughter, so that we could concentrate on Olivia.
Okay.
And my friend Kristen, oh my gosh, she would bring us meals. She took, she would take Hannah. She would came and sat at the hospital with me. When Mike wasn't there, she brought me home cooked meals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we had other neighbors and friends who, came and visited and helped Mike.
Mm-hmm.
One
And
of
now
the
is it? I'm
I'm
sorry. Go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say that one of the challenging things is that we try to have a normal life as possible for our
Mm-hmm.
5-year-old at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So when Olivia got discharged from the hospital, she was in an in-house rehab facility about 2 hours away from us.
Okay.
So I would be at the house with Hannah, our 5-year-old, and Olivia
Mm-hmm.
would be with Kelly at the rehab facility. Then Hannah and I would jump in the car and we would go visit Kelly, and she would immediately tell us what happened, what to expect, and then she would take Hannah back home, and I would stay with Olivia. So
Mm-hmm.
um,
So you tag
trying to have
team.
Yeah.
back teams, and we managed, but Kelly and I would just see each other just to get a quick update and
Mm-hmm.
no,
Wow. And so, so do y'all go therapy appointments together? Or do you have like separate appointments, or you have the same therapist? How does that work? Is one therapy you have different therapists, or you have the same therapist?
Between Olivia and
Yes,
I
because I know you had the brain injury as well. So did you get therapy for that as well, or just Olivia?
well, I concentrated more on her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I had some physical therapy, but because she was pediatric, she was so small, she had to have,
Yes.
specialized pediatric therapy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and mine was, the adult. So, um, and at that time, in 2001, there wasn't a whole lot of information on brain injury, and it was really difficult to find not only pediatric therapists, but also anyone who had any type of background in brain injury. I lucked out in a couple of cases. I got a speech therapist who her mother was actually a speech therapist at a hospital in Texas for brain injury, so that was a great resource for her, and she was amazing. So in some instances, it was trying to piece it together, but we never actually shared a therapist. No,
Okay, therapist. Okay. And so Olivia's she's older now. She's older, like
she's
eight,
24.
24. So she's grown. She's an adult now. Wow. So, did you notice any, I mean, emotions, like for you or her, like different emotions? They don't break, because I know the Rangers have so many different emotions, and you're angry, you're sad, all these different things. Did those things occur for you as well?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I say the blessing in mine was that I could sometimes understand what she was going through. Not a
Mhm.
hundred, obviously you never fully are inside the other person, but I could sometimes relate to her emotions and to her frustrations and her anger, um, you know, a little bit better, I think. But yeah, she and I were both sometimes a
Yeah,
little on the edge, let's
I'm
say.
sure. Severe traumatic brain injury is a little different than a brain injury.
Yep.
So it's the impact. I guess is so much. Is so much more. And I'm just thinking about. I wonder what if mine was considered. Mine's a traumatic brain injury because I had a gunshot. But it's like I don't think that's severe too. But and I guess for her, was she impacted more so on her frontal lobe, or was it a certain part of her brain she was impacted more?
So it was explained to me that she had basically a shearing. So
Uh,
where the doctor said, think of shaken baby syndrome, where the baby's brain is just and everything gets disconnected.
mm,
So yes, it's a lot of the frontal lobe, but also in the back on the occipital lobe. And it was she had 2 or 3 bleeds, but the shearing they think caused the most damage. Um, and the title of the book came from a comment to a neurologist, her pediatric neurologist that said when she was 4 years old. Like you want to tell a story?
sure. He had basically said to us, I've seen other pediatric um, clients, patients who've had less severe of an injury. However, they are far more impacted than Olivia. It's really amazing her progress from the severity of her incident.
Mm-hmm.
And that she truly is a miracle child. And that's what led
Mm-hmm.
us up to the title of the book, our little miracle child.
Yes. So I didn't get you for Olivia. So I'm asking you, Kelly, learn to accept what happened to you, and how did you learn how to accept it? Have you accepted it? And how did you learn to accept it? Your injury.
It was a process. I was in denial. I thought if
Mm-hmm.
I could just concentrate and do better, it would go away, but that doesn't work that way.
No.
And then with time, I started doing some speaking, and I noticed that I would always talk about her story and not
Mhm.
mine. And then I started adding it in, and it was over. It was time. It was some therapy. Of it was also grief therapy of grieving who she was before and
Mhm.
everything that was taken away, and then and accepting it. So it was a very long process, I would think. You know, Years and years. And I was very quiet about it.
Mhm.
Um, I remember I got an award, a volunteer award, and we were sitting in the auditorium, and she's reading my bio, and she turned to me, and she said, "You have a brain injury," and it was such an amazing moment because I didn't realize that she didn't know. I just
Mhm.
assumed she knew. Like I guess it's because I never sat her down and told her. She just didn't know, and the the knowledge in her eyes was like, "Oh my gosh, you're just like me." Um,
Mhm.
so it is a process. It took a long time, and but I think I'm finally accepting it, and trying to help others to accept theirs, and it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something that happens, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, they don't have control over those things.
Right.
It's to the word of my mouth. You had no control
Yeah.
over it. It's just one of those things that just happens, and you have to learn how to accept things that happen to you, and not. I believe it's not it happened to you, but it can also happen for you.
Yeah.
It's so many great things that happened since my injury that I don't know if it happened before. I don't know. So it happens for you too. So it's a blessing in disguise, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Have you driven since your accident? Have you driven since the accident, or
Yes, and
yeah?
that was a lot of people ask me that question, and I think because Mike and I were going back and forth to the hospital, I had to drive. We were in an area that there was no way I could get home. There was no Uber or Lyft.
No, no,
Um,
no.
no, and so that first time where I had to get in the car was, it was in the hospital. I had to walk through the hospital to get to the parking garage, and it was like I was walking like I had lead in my feet. Because I was dreading that. Um, I did it. I probably drove, very, very slow that night, and I made sure not to go the route where the accident was. It took me a long time to go past it, but I think over time it got better, and I also couldn't drive long distances for a while because just cognitively trying to
Right.
do that, but
Mm.
again with practice I was able to overcome that.
Yay. I love to overcome things. It's just something happens. It's like you think it's a halt to everything you have to do for your life, and it's like no, you got to fight back. You got to get back to it. So you can't let it steal what you already have acquired. So you can't just steal it. I'm big on not letting something see your joy, not letting see your peace, and all this kind of thing. So I'm glad you got back to driving. The fear of driving stopped you. So I'm happy you have overcame that. So pressing forward to the better side of things. Y'all doing so many great things, what I call 2.0 chance of life or 2.0 chance. What we got the fact that you two are authors, co-authors, co-authors on your book. So congratulations on your book, The Miracle Child, Traumatic Brain Injury in Me. So how is writing been a dream of yours, Kelly or Michael? You can answer.
I actually went to school for journalism,
Okay.
but as my career progressed, I did less and less and less writing. So um, I had enjoyed it. I just hadn't done it for quite some time.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, if you want to
Um,
share.
yeah. So as I started speaking about our story, I mean, I had journaled in the when we were in the hospital, mainly just so I could remember things and make sure I told Mike, this is what Doctor So and So said. Um, but then, as I started telling our story, everyone kept saying, "Wow, you have such a unique story. Here's a mom and a daughter, both injured in
Mhm.
an accident." And they said, "You should write a book." And Mike and I tossed it around for a bit, and then we thought, you know what, maybe we should. We have a lot of,
Mhm.
to teach people about, advocacy and things. So it was a very long process. Um, and then, I think the pandemic helped kind of narrow us down and to get a
Yeah.
developmental editor and figure things out. Um, so, it was also very cathartic to get all those thoughts down onto paper or computer or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
it really helped us.
So did you write together, or you were separate, or how did that process? How's the collaboration with that? How did that? Did you sit at the
Yeah.
table and then you were like, you write the chapter, or how did it work?
Uh, we took all the above approaches.
Okay.
First of all, we decided that it would be kind of neat, we thought, to have Kelly's perspective of what was happening
Mhm.
and then my
Mhm.
perspective, because we were processing information differently. We heard things perhaps differently. So we thought that would be kind of an interesting way for this book to um, carry forward. And it's really Kelly would put together her notes on paper, and I would do the same. Mine were more from memory, I suppose. I
Mhm.
didn't journal as much as Kelly did, and during the process, it was kind of interesting because Kelly learned certain things that I had written that she wasn't aware of, and vice versa. Because I guess we thought at that time, as we were going through this, that we either assumed that the other knew that or we didn't think it was
Mhm.
important. So we learned a little bit about each other through that process. Um, it was very collaborative that we
Mhm.
didn't have any major disagreements or anything. If anything, it was difficult because we wanted to put so much information in there that we actually had to take it up quite a bit.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. And I think I find out too. I find out when I write, it's different from talking. When you talk, it's like you're not able to think as much. But when you write, you get all the time to word thing. It's like okay, get a quiet room, you got all the time to think. And it's like you can really, really do a brain dump. You really can really write everything down. It just is you have so much more time to think versus when you're talking. It's like you're trying to make sure you're trying to focus on the next word you're saying. But when you're writing, it's totally different. There's more time to think with your brain. So when you're
Yeah.
writing versus talking, yeah. So Kelly, we're going to you. How did you begin with the Brain Injury Association, and did that dive into the brain injury council member? Was that due to this accident and all that? Is that how it all came about?
No, actually, what happened was about a year after our accident, I went to a conference by, we had an organization called Brain Injury Services. They had a conference, and there was a speaker there, and I don't know what it was about her. She's very dynamic, and I approached her and asked her some questions. And it turned out she became the executive director of the Brain Injury Association of Virginia. And we developed a relationship. And over the years, I would reach out to her with questions or who can I contact about this? And then she had an opening on her board of directors. And so I applied and I got on. And then that just kind of like snowballed into other opportunities. The advisory council with Brain Injury Association of America, working, with the National Center for Person Centered Planning, and doing other things like that. It just kind of all snowballed, but it's been great.
That's how it works. It's just one thing leads to another thing. So I love how that works sometimes. You do one thing is leads to another. So and Mr. Michael, I'm sorry, Kelly. And what does a subject matter expert do as well? What is that? I never
So,
heard of it before.
so they use that term as for someone who has lived experience that they can, they're an expert on their own lived experience. So that's what, and because I have a lot of knowledge about brain injury, not that I went to school for it, but it was more
Mhm.
I've learned it along the way.
I never heard it before. I'm like, subject matter is okay. Well, that's interesting. So, oh, okay. So I can say the same thing too, I guess.
Yes, you
Absolutely.
are now a subject matter expert.
Not an insight. Okay. Thank you
You,
for do
you just
that.
helped with your bio. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I added to it. What is your job entail? What does your job entail entirely?
So I'm involved with a trade
Okay.
association made of members, and I oversee a certification program
Okay.
where I send auditors to our members' facilities to make sure they're running safely, securely, keeping in mind environmental sensitivity, and that security issues are being addressed. And if they pass this audit, then they remain members. If not, we give them the opportunity to correct those issues. But at the end of the day, if they are not able to correct them, then the relationship with the association is terminated. And recently, we've rolled out a new sustainability feature, and under that umbrella is corporate social responsibility. And we really want to make sure that we are advocating for a strong diversity, equity, and inclusion program.
Hmm.
And, that might be a different concept for some of our members, but we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunities for professional and personal development, and that their views and perspectives really carry a lot of weight with the company. And so we want to make sure that everyone is well represented, even the
Yes.
people who have disabilities.
Yes.
So it's been an interesting journey along the way for that for our members and myself.
I'm sure. It sounds like it sounds very intensive. Sounds
Mhm.
very intensive. But nonetheless rewarding though. Rewarding that you're helping people. You know, that's what we're out here for, to help one another. That's what we're out here for. So
Yeah.
I love that. But both of you do. And so what advice would you give to another mother or family member or caregiver who's caring for their child? I want both of you to answer the question individually.
Okay. My advice is to ask questions,
Mhm.
that to really listen to your gut instinct. You're going to get lots of opinions, you're going to get lots of advice, and it might not all be applicable. And if you find a doctor, therapist, whoever, and if not, you don't feel it's a good fit, then find another one. There will be someone else out there who will be a good fit for you or your family member.
Mhm.
And just to keep advocating, keep fighting. I think the more we can educate others about brain injury and the effects of brain injury, the better. Everyone has a story, and
Yes.
as you know, not every brain injury is the same. You've seen
Mhm.
one, you've seen one. Um,
Yes. I
Yeah,
agree with that.
and
I agree with that. I like your
yeah,
answer.
I think just to follow along with that, we've had recommendations for therapists and physicians and specialists that highly recommended, and they may
Hmm.
be a perfect fit for certain individuals. So you really have to make sure that that recommendation works for you, and in our case, our child. And sometimes it didn't, and that was kind of difficult initially because we heard so many great things about this individual. The other thing that I would stress, which I think is common sense, but you can't repeat enough, is patience. That it's a long journey, and
Yes.
there really isn't a destination, if you will. It's a path that you are continually following, and you have to figure out what is the best approach. And you might make mistakes, but to advocate for your loved ones and for yourself, and to be patient along this journey, because, well, there's no quick answers.
I don't
Um,
know.
yeah.
Not at all. So this question is popped to my mind. So how do you all, or do you, and if you do, how do you celebrate the day that this happened?
That's a good question. So a few years ago, we didn't really celebrate for a number of years. Although ironically, the first time I spoke about it was to an EMT refresher class, and it was on the first year anniversary.
Oh wow.
It seemed kind of appropriate. Um, and so, it became a very somber day for me in a lot of ways. But then we started going to the rescue squad of the company that saved her life. We would
Mhm.
bring them like a little token of a gift and a thank you note. And then when
Mhm.
Olivia was old enough to understand why we did this every year, she took a huge part in it. Um, and I started making it a day where it wasn't necessarily a big party celebration, but maybe she and I would go out to lunch or have our nails done, to
Mhm.
just try to celebrate that we were all still here and we were
Yeah,
still whole. Um, that's kind of how it's been, not celebrated. That's how we honor it each year.
I
Yeah, and
love that. And, okay,
uh, I was just going to say that initially we were somewhat um, not overly anxious to celebrate that day, and even to say the word celebrate, it seems to be kind of a paradigm, if you
yeah,
will. But later on, we felt that you know what, we were truly blessed that she's with us. We're truly fortunate that more of her is with us and was taken away. So we do want to recognize that and make it a point. So when we go to the rescue squad each year on the anniversary, it is a special, rewarding feeling
for
for us.
sure. I love that. And I just think it's so imperative that we do celebrate it. I remember the first few years after my injury, I would cry. That's all. I would cry. I would get sad around the time because it actually happened 2 days after my 21st birthday. So literally, my birthday's one day, and then 2 days later, I go to the date, and it's like, well, how can I even celebrate because I'm supposed to be sad? But who says supposed to be sad? Like who says that? And so once I began changed my mindset around it. And my cousins said something to me about it, changed my whole trajectory of how I looked at the date. So now it's like it is a celebration because we are still here. So it's like why not celebrate it? We don't have to be sad. Yes, you can take a moment and reflect on the things and be grateful, but it's like at the end of the day, we're still here. God bless us to still be here and to still live and to do what we're called to do. So we still got a purpose, right? If we're still here, so it's worth celebrating. So I
Yeah.
think we're sharing. I think we're sharing it with me as well. And so I know we're in some of the same support groups, I believe, on LinkedIn. And so how these support groups help you? I'm not sure you're in support groups, and I'm not sure if you're in support groups too, or it's just municipality. I'm not sure.
Well, I think the first group that we looked at for support was actually um, parents, family members of
Mhm.
an individual who was afflicted with brain injury. And that was a difficult group for us to sit in.
Mhm.
But the difficulty was a little bit different, I think, from our perspective, because our daughter was improving at a rapid rate. She was beginning to talk and to walk and to speak
Mhm.
herself. And unfortunately, some of the other parents, their children or family members were wheelchair bound or
Mhm.
they were not able to communicate. And Kelly and I, we looked at each other and said, we don't feel we belong. We
Yeah.
feel kind of in between
Mhm.
someone who has this invisible injury, as her case was at that.
Mhm.
So that was our first group, I think, that we initially sought for help, and but we just felt that that didn't quite fit us.
Yeah.
And just like with the doctors, it took a while. Like I would go to different support groups that I heard of, and
Mhm.
you know, see, what was a good fit for me personally, at that stage. And I think just meeting other people who it was very rare I met a parent of a child who had a brain injury, but I would at least talk to other people and, you know, get resources, be able to talk about those hard feelings and
Yeah.
things and and then, not comparing, but just, sharing resources. And again, what works for one person is not going to work for the other, but at least
Yeah.
there were other things we could look into. Um,
Yeah.
and, and just knowing you're not alone because it can be very isolating and, very lonely place.
Yes, it can be. So was there ever like, there any like ever like any guilt that when you were in the support group, like, well, my child's not like this, so did you
Yeah.
feel the guilt? Yeah, yeah.
There was a little bit of guilt or, feeling that, um, that person deserved more empathy or, you know, so that, I think that was part of it. Although we did get a lot of resources out of that
Okay.
meeting, things that we didn't know about that we were able to tap into for help. So on that end, and no one was, like, oh, you don't belong here. It was
Yeah.
more internal.
Right. Yeah. It's how it is most of the time. It's normally
Yeah,
internal when you feel guilty or anything like that. Because I mean, you're still injured. At the end of the day, you still injured, impacted. Is
yeah,
you can help the recovery process. You can't help that. That's
yeah.
something you're control of. So yeah, I'm glad you got past it and find something that worked for you. So two more questions. What does ranger awareness mean to you?
To me, it just means, letting people know what a brain injury is. I mean, everyone will look at her and say, she looks fine,
Hmm.
um, because they don't know, on first impression, yeah, she does, but she's had to, she's suffered a lot. She's had a lot of, struggles. Um, we went to meet with someone, about some school stuff, and she was the head of disability services. And when Libby left the room, she looked at me and goes, wow, she can talk really well.
Hmm.
And I was in shock. I didn't know how to even respond to her. I thought, you know nothing about, I mean, you're the head of disability services. This should
Yeah.
be, you should be more comfortable with this. You should be able to recognize. So I think it's just letting people know. And, big part of our message is it doesn't just affect the person, it affects the entire family unit.
That's right, Mr. Michael. I'm sorry, Michael.
Uh, well, everything that Kelly said is so true. I think that the impression that I would like to give to people is that there's no textbook
Yeah.
available on brain injury that is going to be so decisive,
Yeah.
analyze, predict, and help this individual because the uniqueness of brain injury is such that everyone needs to have specialized training and attention. And I think not just the schools and people that you meet, but sometimes family members have a hard time understanding that
Yes.
concept. And it even goes to the extent when we wrote about it, but when Olivia was in kind of in a bad stage of recovery, she was fearful for a windy day when leaves would be blowing around because she was afraid a leaf would hit her head.
Oh.
And she would act out like if we were at a festival or something like that. And people would just stop and stare. It's very difficult to explain at that situation
Mhm.
why your child can't calm down.
Mm.
So I think if anything, it's a matter of, well, we live in a time where we definitely need more empathy in the world.
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. Definitely. So what's next for you too?
What's next for us? Is that what
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to some conferences right now and, presenting, talking about advocacy mainly. Um, I think just trying to, get the word out and keep celebrating the joyous moments.
Yes. Yes.
I think Kelly probably didn't elaborate enough that she's actually featured as the keynote speaker for the
Yes,
Brain Injury Association of Maine. So she's leaving tomorrow for that. Um,
yay. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We co-presented virtually for the Brain Injury Association of Michigan, and we found a good group. Really, is the local Rotary. So we
Okay.
had a presentation for one group, and we have a couple others that are interested, and just a lot of miscellaneous things out there. We had an interview with Talk Radio Europe, which was kind of exciting.
Wow.
So we want to
Love it.
keep championing the cause, and we're always quick to say that um, we want to do this and push the efforts with the book because a portion of the proceeds goes to the Brain Injury Association of Virginia, where we live, in the Loudoun County Volunteer Rescue Squad because they save not just our lives, but lives
Wow.
in the community. So
I love that.
we're going to keep plugging away.
I love that. Love it. Well, congratulations on your book, The Miracle Child, Traumatic Brain Injury and Me. Put it on the screen again so people can see it. I was great with y'all the success in the world. I pray things to generate more revenue, sales, and inspiration for other people who need to know, they're not alone. We're not alone in this. And I know it's gonna touch. I want to touch kind of lives, but I know it's already touching kind of lives, and will continue to touch kind of lives. It's touching my life. I got to get my own copy. I get everyone or the book. I get my guest book, so I got to get your book too. And so thank you again for so much taking time out of your schedule and busy schedules to the interview with me to inspire the message with your story because I know it's impacted so many more people. So anything that you want to say before I end it or
So I
any
just
other
wanted to
words?
say thank you once again for all you've done, not just for having us today, but you know how active that you have been. And,
Thank you.
your third season. So congratulations
Yeah.
to you and the work and the message that you're spreading. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
And it's been great seeing you
Thank you
sort
so
of
much.
face to face. We communicated otherwise, but thank you so much, Eric. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit too.
Thank you. And right now they can take contact with you. They have a question. Want to reach out to you? How can they can reach you all?
Yeah, they can reach us. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or the Miracle Child website. There's an email contact there also.
Okay. Mr. Michael?
The same. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the method I use the most.
Yeah.
Um, but also we do check our website quite often for messages. So we're anxious and eager to tell others of the story, but more
Yeah.
importantly, how we can improve lives for many.
I love it. Thank you all again so much. Thank you for tuning in to hear Kelly and Michael Lang's story. I know you've been touched with their inspiration that they provided you all. Remember, you can connect with Kelly and Michael on link at Kelly Lane. It's KELLY Lane LENG and Michael Lane MICHAEL Lane LENG and support those with brain injuries. So consider making contribution to not only the Brain Association of Virginia, but also of Missouri or wherever you're located at. And I believe every state has an association. Is that correct? Kevin, is that correct? Most states have brain injury associations. Okay. So yeah, connect with your local state and see what their organization is for brain injury and make a donation contribution because it helps lives and it
Yeah.
helps support people who have brain injury. So consider making a contribution. So that's all for today. So hope you enjoyed meeting Kelly and Michael Lang. I about the story, their book, The American Child. She made a brain injury in me. I'm Eric Renee. I'm on Instagram, Erica R. Walker, and on YouTube, Eric Renee Walker. So tune next week for another story of triumph. I'm Eric Renee. We are the story, and you took change your rubber chores. See y'all later. Bye.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.